business show where we talk about the business of streaming, entertainment, rights tech, music, and games. Fridays are always about the music of business, and we have a special show today. Our guest today will be Jonathan Azu. Jonathan is the founder of Culture Collective, and Bryan Calhoun. Bryan is with the Blueprint Group. They're both been in talent management and working with top talent in the U.S. and globally for quite a while. So looking forward to hearing their perspective on how the current climate and what to expect in the future in the music business. A couple of reminders. First off, if you've been with us on the show before, you know, to introduce yourself on chat, say hello, say who you are. Make sure to, before you do that, change the drop down from all panelists to all panelists and attendees so that everybody can see who you are. Feel free to make some friends, say hello, enjoy the chat. Also, if you have a specific question for the panel, please put it in the Q&A area. You'll see two buttons on the bottom nav. It's chat and Q&A. Also, we'll have a poll, as always, around the middle of the show. And we'll put that up, and it's always fun to kind of hear people's responses to the poll questions. All right, folks, without further ado, I'll turn it over to my good friend Jonathan Azu and Bryan Calhoun.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ned. Thank you for having us. I hope everybody's staying safe out there. And I appreciate you joining us. So I guess, Bryan, give you a little bit of history for everybody. Bryan and I we've known each other for a very long time. I think we both entered the business relatively around the same time. And I always think about, in my career, I think about like executives as NBA players, and you know, so what would I do to like put the dynasty together? What would it look like? And I've always thought in my head Bryan would be one of those guys, right? Because he's just one of the smartest minds in business. Especially as it relates to digital. He's done so many amazing things. So I'm excited. This is the first time we've ever done this. So we're longtime friends. We've done some work with each other in the past, but somebody that I've respected greatly. And I thought that it would be fun to have a conversation around digital in this new era that we're going into, because Bryan is such a forward-thinking person. Jonathan Azu, I spent many years in live events, worked at Superfly, who are the producers of Bonnaroo and Outside Lands and a bunch of other great brands. And I spent many years at Red Light as general manager. And then a year ago, as Ned mentioned, I launched Culture Collective for kind of reasons bigger than music, to help create some diversity in the marketplace for executives of color that own their own businesses. So I took my clients with me. Red Light was super supportive in it. I launched Culture Collective a year ago in March, which is crazy because if it had been a year later, it'd have been even more interesting.
Congratulations on the 1 year anniversary. That's a huge deal, man.
Thank you, man. Go ahead.
I just got to jump in for a quick second here, because like I appreciate you saying all those very kind things about me, and I know it's hard to like say things about yourself, but I'm gonna say them about you now. So I just want to make sure everybody, you know, sort of really recognizes, you know, that Jonathan, he's a luminary in this space, someone I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I've watched him make really, really great, interesting, smart moves. And I think one of the things that's really fascinating about, like, I love having conversations with John, which is why, like, we have like these really great conversations, like just the two of us. So it's going to be fun to do this with an audience. And I always have a good time talking to Jonathan, because like he always asks like these really like kind of hard questions, like really, really makes you think, and really sort of like pushing the envelope. And sometimes I might think I have something kind of figured out, and then he'll be like, "Oh, yeah, what about this angle of it?" And I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, okay." So anyway, it's awesome to be here. And one of the things also that I really respect about Jonathan is that I think that there are very few people in the world who sort of have this ability to kind of like walk the line between representing talent and being on the business side, and having the conversations with artists and be able to get them to pay attention, being an artist whisperer. There are a few of them, and I put you in that very elite category of, there's a very small number of people that I think really can do that well. You're one of them.
I appreciate that. Thank you, man.
Absolutely, man. So I know it looks like we already started getting questions in here. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Do you want to share with everybody just a little bit of your background?
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure. So worked in the music industry for 25 plus years. I've worked with, I currently work with an artist management company, Blueprint Group, and I do digital strategy. We represent Lil Wayne. We actually don't represent Lil Wayne artist management stuff, but I still work with Wayne. But The Roots, Jill Scott, G-Eazy, Trippie Redd, Jay Critch, and others. I spent time working at Sound Change. I worked at labels. Um, I currently work at Pandora as well in the artist relations team, industry relations team, sort of help artists and labels maximize opportunities on the platform. And I wrote a book and built software for musicians to manage their business called the Music Business Toolbox. I encourage you to check it out, musicbusinesstoolbox.com. And I think first and foremost, I consider myself an artist advocate. I generally find myself representing and really looking out for the interests of the creators.
Amazing. Unbelievable work. And like I said, one of the things I've enjoyed, just to jump in, that I've enjoyed that you've been working closely with Questlove and the Roots,
Right.
on all what they're bringing to life right now in this kind of post, this COVID world of connecting with their fans. Maybe you want to give everybody just like a quick overview. I have some questions on it.
Oh, yeah.
Open it up to the group, but maybe give everybody a little bit of overview of what you've been up to with them.
Sure. So, in fact, there was a really great piece in Fast Company that was published about it this morning. I'll drop the link in the chat. But Questlove, who's the DJ, who's the drummer of the Roots, but is also he's a big time celebrity DJ as well, and something he's very, very passionate about. When the quarantine really went into effect, he wanted to start streaming live on Instagram, and he thought, well, instead of just doing Instagram, maybe we should do it on YouTube as well. And I said to him and the manager, I was like, listen, instead of thinking about it just like we're going on that one or two channels, I said, let's think about this sort of like the president, when the president does a press release, and you've got ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, CNN, everybody's got their cameras there. They're filming the exact same thing and broadcasting on their channel. And something I've wanted to do for a while was to multicast something that one of my clients did. Well, this was a great opportunity, and it's the right client too. And he was like, oh, that's a great idea. How do we set it up? And so basically sort of figured out what the technical implementation of that would be. And we did, and we started broadcasting live. And I think we're like 36 days in a row now going live. Wow. On Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So we've been going really, really hard on that. And those are his live DJ sets. But on top of that, the band has been doing other VOD content, which lives on YouTube, which has been crazy. And one of the things that they say in the Fast Company article is like they've always had a lot of times they've had ideas about things that they want to do and just didn't have the time to do it, and so they've kind of started doing some of those things. So other members of the group have been doing things like you've got Kirk doing guitar stories, so he's talking about playing guitar with Steve Miller or Bruce Springsteen, and then James Poser is talking about playing and writing songs with Adele and Mariah Carey, and Stro Elliott is like deconstructing and then reconstructing beats live, well, not live,
yeah,
this thing. And then Questlove Supreme, which is the podcast that that Questlove has been doing for 3.5 years, I believe now. Started doing live episodes of it as well too. So it's just been, it's been a bonanza for the past few weeks with those guys.
And has that been something that started primarily because of COVID or because of the situation we're in, or was that was that a business model, a business plan that you had
so it
pre-established?
No, it was really something that happened because of COVID. It was like, what can we just say? Okay, so we're not touring, not doing the show, with Fallon is not happening, what are things that we can do in order to sort of continue pushing the business forward, creating attention, and ultimately, trying to figure out what we can do to generate revenue. So sort of with all that being said, it's like, hey, here's opportunities. And we already had the foundation in place, because we had the accounts established. We had a well optimized YouTube channel. We work with a great video platform or company called Quarter Lab. It's an MCN, but helps a lot with all kinds of video strategy. So my guy Gray over there, Gray Ganaway, has been a really big help. But when all this happened, it's like, what are we going to do? Fortunately, a lot of those pieces were in place. Now, we didn't have our Twitch account set up. So like when I presented the idea, they're like, oh, that's great. Let's do it tomorrow. And basically in 24 hours, we had to kind of make it happen. But, that's what we do.
Amazing. One of the questions that we could throw up on the poll
takes a week.
Exactly. And so one of the things I think we'll do is throw up a poll. I'm just curious how many people had streaming as a part of their platform going into this virus, and whether or not that was something that that was already there, or is it something that they created because of the virus. I'm just curious what people's response is going to be.
Yeah. Actually, I just tried to vote, and it said hosts and panelists can't vote. Can you see the results? I don't see the results.
I don't know if we can see the results here.
Okay.
Have you ever? I think we're still waiting on.
Okay.
Oh, there's a couple more. Okay, we asked a couple more questions too, actually. So you may be able to see the other questions, but I'm curious about how many people were thinking about this as they were going into with COVID, whether or not streaming is a part of what they or charging for streaming was a part of what they were planning to do with their audience. Are you guys charging for any of those?
So we haven't done that yet. None of my clients have done that yet, but it is definitely something that we are looking at doing. And look, I want to hear your thoughts on this too, because you work with heavily touring artists, and do you if you're able to figure out a way to generate revenue from a tour. So if you've got a client that makes whatever it is, they make $10,000 a night, 50,000, 100,000, whatever it is that they make each night. Let's say it's 10 grand. If you make 10 grand and you make it in St. Louis, you can then go do that in Detroit and Chicago, and you can replicate that in every city and make $10,000, every night. When you move that online, your audience is so much larger, right? Even if you are able to generate the $10,000, how do you replicate that every single day, right? And I don't think that you can, but how do you do enough events and differentiate those events so that you have the ability to make it something that's going to be, continued revenue? And I don't have the answer to that necessarily. I think the team and I are really thinking about it. I think one of the things I look at, like what Erykah Badu has done. For those of you who've seen it, it's pretty cool. She's done some pay-per-view events, and the setup and what she performed for the shows were vastly different. So it was a very different user experience. I guess the question is, like, how many times can you do that? Like, what are you doing? I mean, you've got artists that tour constantly. What are you thinking in terms of the ability to do this? Jonathan, did we lose you?
Having some technical issues.
Okay.
I apologize. I'm sorry. What was that last question? I'm sorry. You cutting out.
No. So just what about you? How are you thinking about it? Like, so we are definitely going to do some pay-per-view events. Like, we're going to try it, no doubt. I think what Erykah Badu has done has been pretty interesting, because she's done 2 events, and the events were really differentiated. So if you missed it the first time, you weren't getting the same thing the second time. Like there was
Yeah.
something special about each event, right? So, you know, how are you thinking about that for your artists? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, to me, I mean, it's heavy on our minds because ultimately, and I've been talking to every agency, every major agency, every smaller agency to get perspectives. And I think we're all getting pretty comfortable with that, you know, touring won't come back in any form until earliest late this year. And thinking through how do you supplement that income, especially for the artists that are a little bit smaller that really don't have a massive runway financially. So we've been thinking about what's in front of the paywall, what's behind the paywall, because we've lived in, for the most part, we lived in front of the paywall world where it's been IG Live and YouTube and Twitter, and we just kind of put content out, and there's no paywall really associated with it, you know. And I'm starting to think a lot about what is premium content, what is freemium content, right? And is there a difference between the two of them? And then ultimately, what would a fan actually pay for that, right? How much, you know, how much can you charge a fan to have access to premium content, and what is that? You know, I've told each of my clients, you know, putting a really clear, cohesive digital strategy together that's both a free strategy and a paid strategy, and, you know, deciding what you pull a trigger on is going to be a very smart thing, because ultimately when touring does come back into the fold, you can still have those strategies in play and they could really leverage each other.
mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. You know, I don't have the answers yet. I think that, you know, we've got some interesting things that we've learned thus far on doing what we've been doing, and you know, I think that you've also seen from the beginning of this, it was, you know, when it happened, it was immediately people just kind of like, I'm going to go live, you know, on Instagram, and I'm just going to do it. And then it became, I'm going to do something to benefit, you know, first responders and people on the front lines and people in need and that kind of thing. But I mean, really, I think we're at the phase now where we've got to figure out how our clients get paid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, our livelihoods are on the line. And, you know, I think unfairly sometimes, you know, artists are expected to do things for charity, but, you know, they've got families, they've got things that they need to do to pay, and there's the teams behind them. So you know, I'm sure you've had to have some hard conversations with, you know, tour managers and sound guys and lighting.
And we've never seen anything like this before. But I have been in the industry long enough to I remember, you know, fundraising efforts around a lot of natural disasters, and never a pandemic, but natural disasters, you know, whether it be Hurricane Sandy, whether it be Katrina. And I'm even, you know, old enough to remember, you know, 9/11, although I was just starting in the music business around then. And I remember, you know, you have that first phase of which is great, everyone doing philanthropic work, a lot of artists saying, hey, let me, you know, offer up my time and my services to raise funds. And then you have a second wave where people are starting to get comfortable with the new normal and having to build revenue models based upon where we're at as a society. And I think that's where we're at now. So, because the question came up to me recently, well, you know, from an artist, should I have been doing all that stuff for the last month? And it's like, yeah, I mean, ultimately, you know, I think everyone was out there doing things to raise money or putting content out there to help people get through the moments that we're in. But now we need to shift into a phase of a real strategy around how do people make money from it at the end of the day, right? How does an artist really make money in the digital world, to where the fan really feels like they're still being taken care of and catered to.
So let me ask you this. Are your clients receptive to pay-per-view events?
They are, definitely. Yeah. You know, I mean, I think, you know, obviously every client has a different threshold on how much, how often, what defines a pay-per-view event. But ultimately, I think that, as long as it's done in a way that's interesting and different, and something that they maybe wouldn't get if they went to a show, it's quality content. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's doing covers of albums, if it's doing different arrangements. There's all different sorts of ways you can present an interesting, compelling product, if you will, to a fan where they'd be willing to pay for it. But just the short answer is yeah. Again, I think you have to be open to it to some form or fashion. The other thing that we've been thinking a lot about is the VIP program, right? Does that change, right? So ultimately, if we go down and the states open back up and either an artist doesn't feel comfortable or the state says that we still try to adhere to social distancing guidelines, how do you do a VIP program like it's been done in the past? And I've heard a lot of different interesting ways around that, right? Again, still surveying the landscape, but what does a Zoom call look like after the show with VIP members that purchase the program to see the after the show experience for the artist as they go home?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know this is one of the things we were talking about earlier this week. It's just that those VIP packages can be really meaningful portions of touring revenue. So, it is really something, you need to be able to replicate. Now, fortunately, if you've been doing the VIP packages for a little bit of time, you have the contact information on all those people, right? So,
correct.
Some of your most valuable customers, and just being able to take it and provide something for them, people who are willing to pay for something special with the artist. I also want to kind of add, in doing the whole thing with going streaming on all 5 of these platforms every night. Again, I'm thinking about revenue, and look, none of the revenue is meaningful that we've received, right? It's not lots of money, but
in comparison to what you would make touring, basically.
That's right. It's just it's trivial compared to touring money. But what I am excited about is the fact that I actually seeing some money where there was none. I'm seeing some, and on the live streams. Look, Twitch has actually generated revenue, and we have. And I'll be frank with you, I was not expecting that we would receive any revenue from it, because it's people making donations, people subscribing, people tipping, and I was surprised that anybody did it at all. But people are doing it. So across the 5 platforms, the revenue from live comes from Twitch, even though we're streaming live on all 5 platforms, and then VOD.
Is that ad, and that is mostly ad supported revenue?
No, it's not on Twitch. It's not ads. It's people just giving money. It's people just saying, "Here, I like what you're doing. Here's $5." That's where it's coming from.
The tip jar model.
Yeah, and because we weren't pushing it, I didn't expect there to be any revenue. I thought, maybe if like 5 people did it, but it ended up being, a lot more than that. So now,
what's interesting about Twitch is I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, so now it's like, we're optimizing that, because it I mean, how it is. You have to be careful about finding the fine line between, with the artists and fans about asking for money. You know what I mean? It can be like an uncomfortable thing for people, but each platform has its own specific culture, and a part of the culture on Twitch is giving to the creators that you care about.
Yeah. And I watched Questlove broadcast last night. I'm a huge Fela Kuti fan. Tony Allen's passing, and I know he did a special set, and I usually watch it on IG Live, but I went to Twitch, and I gotta be honest with you, I know Twitch I've tracked it as a business. I'm not a user. I've become a user recently, and I was really impressed with the quality and then the dynamic layers on top of the stream. You know, the picture of Tony Allen. You could see the turntables, and Quest was breaking down the hi-hat on these songs. And as like as a music head, I'm like really into it, and it's like, this is premium content. This is something that it would be worth paying for. What I was going to mention about Twitch, for those that don't know, it's owned by Amazon, right? So one of the companies that has really flourished through this whole thing has been Amazon. And as they become bigger, it'll be interesting to see how that gamification platform shifts maybe into a place to where they are going at maybe more of a, going out of YouTube, right? Where you're actually now known for all sorts of content, not just gaming content. And they just did a really interesting hire, right? They just brought over Tracy Chan.
Yes. Your guy.
Over there, who we both know. Who's a super smart. I think his exact title is head of music content or head of music partnerships.
Product. I think it's product. Yeah, he's going to be working on building the tools. For those of you who don't know, he was at Spotify, and he was, largely responsible for building Spotify for artists. So he's going to be taking his talents to continue to build out the already kind of extensive tools for creators.
Mm-hmm. So one big takeaway for everyone that's on is jump onto Twitch, get to understand it either as an artist or a manager. And the first thing I think a client had told me that when I brought up Twitch, I think much like Questlove, was like, isn't that for like young gamers?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, not anymore.
It was so funny, man, because like we while he's spinning, and like he's in like upstate New York, and so just send him a message that's like, hey man, there are 10,000 people watching you on Twitch right now. And he was like,
wow,
there's 10,000 people watching me on Twitch, but isn't everybody 13? He said something like that, right? So then you like the feed, the comment feed was people like, I'm 37 or I'm 42 or what, like, and I was shocked at how many people were chiming in with their age, and they were 25, 30 and older. I was really surprised by that. And it's also interesting too, just honestly, it's not there about it, but like the number of unique listeners and total time spent listening is greater on Twitch than it is on any of the other channels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for the artists that game, like I have one client that actually is a gamer, and so he's starting to build a following, like a bifurcation, right? Like people are going on there because they like his music, and then he's now building a whole other subset of fans that are just into him because he's a really good gamer, right?
Okay.
And then there'll be a small margin that kind of like bleeds a little bit in the middle. It's a good segue. Jeffrey Stansfield was asking a question specifically about music events in esports, and how one of Drake's songs was one of his biggest songs, was a big hit in the esport world. And I think that, again, like with Twitch taking a real go at music and hiring a super high level music executive, you're going to start to see the bleed of that. And what does it look like to try to break an album or break a song on Twitch as a platform, right? And I'm sure something like that is up Tracy's sleeve, to try to figure out how that platform blends it together. And I know for some of you that know Lee Trink, Lee had a really long music career, managed Kid Rock, spent some time, I believe, at Virgin. He was GM of Virgin Records, and now he's now running Fans, the esports team. So there's a lot of music folks going into the esports world, and I think you're going to start to see the bleed between the two of those.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, look, there is a direct connection from streaming through these platforms and revenue. And anytime that's the case, I think, we've got to at least explore the opportunities. And I don't know, I don't know if we're sort of like jumping on the bandwagon here, even talking about, what Travis Scott did with Fortnite.
Yeah.
Yesterday. But, I don't know if you watched
large example.
Yeah, I mean, clearly that's not something that you can replicate if you're like a DIY artist, right? But it's very cool, and I think it sort of just like demonstrates the power. But I think one of the things, sort of stepping back from like talking about this just one platform in particular, but like now really is a time I think that managers and artists should be looking at the tool sets that are available for, on all of the platforms, right? Like now is the time to like really sort of like dig into the tools and how you use them. Certainly we've been talking about Twitch, and they've got extensive, tools for monetization and growth, and you can build in bots to help do things. There's tip jars and monetization and stuff like that. But you're thinking about like Pandora and the artist marketing platform. How can you leverage the audience that you have there to create awareness and drive traffic to where you can make money, sell merch, that kind of thing. Now, Spotify for artists, there's certainly opportunities for, great opportunities for connection and also collaboration with other artists. YouTube has got pretty extensive tools as well. At YouTube, it's also helpful if you've got someone who's an expert on that platform specifically to be able to help. But now I think it's a really good time to be thinking about using the tools that are already available to you. And I don't have like a hard percentage here, but I talk to artists frequently, and I've talked to people at other DSPs, and I'm like, all right, how many people are actually using all of the tools on here? You know what I mean? And for the most part, it's the minority of people, and the minority of those people are using the tools to the fullest extent of their capabilities. So
what do you think? A good question for you, or two questions. One is, how much of an investment do you think it is, from a financial standpoint, to multicast across all, like you're doing with Quest, right? So to make it look good, I don't, not talking Travis Scott land, right? So we're talking, I'm an artist, and I do all my own stuff. I don't really have a team, quote unquote, team around me, but I'm willing to make the investment to make sure that when I do broadcast, that it's done the right way. What kind of investment roughly is that?
A few $1,000s, not tens of thousands of dollars, but not $1,000. It sort of depends, but I think one of the biggest tricks about it is if you think about like your connection at your house. Even if you've got a good connection, what you don't want to do is you don't want to stream to 5 platforms simultaneously from your house, because that's the stream times 5. So what you want to do is, and what we do is, we have it sent out one time, and then we split it after, after the signal is already left, so that we don't have that big of a drain on the bandwidth and the consumption in the house. So but it does take some technical implementation to be able to make that happen, and I suspect it's the kind of thing that will get easier and easier to do.
Are there any, like, just if you say the top for the artist that represents themselves and doesn't have a team, again, what are the top softwares that you can use that are easy to subscribe to, that are cheap to do the restream and all that?
What is it? Oh gosh. Oh man, put me on the spot. Is it Streamlabs? Streamlabs, I think it's Streamlabs is one. Restream.io, I believe.
Yeah, Restream.io is one that I'm familiar with.
Restream.io. Those aren't the ones that we use. And of course, now I'm blanking on the name of the platform that we've used, that we've been using. Oh man, until I blink on the name of it, I'm sorry.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there are options, and I think they're just going to continue to get better.
Yeah. And just to recap, so that's broadcasting from home on one camera, one device, and then that broadcast goes into a restreamer, and then it's split out, versus having 3 or 4 cameras around you at the same time trying to broadcast each of the platforms. I assume Instagram, should we just talk quickly about Instagram, since that seems to be the one that everyone really likes to use for these verses? And I know you have a Jill Scott, Erykah Badu verses coming up.
Yeah, we just announced it.
We were all witness to Teddy Riley and and Babyface, and what happened there when they try to probably, less is more, I guess I would say, right? But Instagram there's some limits there for using Instagram Live for these kind of interactions with fans, right?
Yeah. Look, you're limited by sort of the the audio quality. Number one, you are limited to 1 hour. You're sort of limited to the real estate that you're given on the device. And we obviously saw some issues when they were trying to connect. But I also sort of have to say that it's like that was the right place for it, at least to start, because the people were there and they had the engagement, and it was able to grow into what it is, in part because the people are there. I mean, it was part of like the strategy around multicasting in the first place. Let's just go to where the people are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It seemed like it was interesting because that day that, for those of you that aren't familiar, Teddy Riley, legend, right? Legend producer, artist, and Babyface decided to do a face-off on Instagram Live. And it had been heavily rumored for weeks and then became a reality on a Saturday night a couple weeks ago. And you had Babyface, who was sitting there, much like we are, just kind of in a room, with some AirPods in, ready to roll.
Right.
And you had Teddy that had a full production, right? He, they just couldn't get it to work, right? They couldn't get it to work at all. So, what ultimately ended up happening, they ended up kind of rescheduling it. But what was interesting that night was that it was actually trending #1 on Twitter above Global Citizens, right? Who were doing a massive webcast campaign to raise funds for COVID. And the Teddy Riley IG Live was actually trending all day and all night above that. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but ultimately they were able to get it work. And I think they probably had more concurrent streams than anything that's been up on Instagram to date. What I'm hearing.
Yeah, it had over 500,000 concurrents.
Completely insane. Completely
That is
insane.
A huge number.
Massive number.
Absolutely gigantic
number. So let's take a couple more questions here.
Hey, Jonathan, it looks like they also have results from the poll.
Okay. I'm not sure how to pull that up here. There we go. Amazing. All right. So have you or any of your artists charged for an event for access to online content before COVID? So most of the folks, that had not been the case, which is interesting because if you're in that camp, you're definitely thinking about it now. Yeah. How much will digital be a part of your business model going forward? Everybody says it's going to be a part of their business model, which makes sense. And now it's about what platforms are you using? What are the tools that you're using out there? Number 3, this is one that I think is up for great debate, is what should the cost be for that performance content? And unanimously, everybody says that it should be fans should less than what you would pay to see the artist live, which is an interesting one because to me, I think a lot about, the reason why you pay, for one ticket price versus the other is the experience, right? And in theory, the closer you get to the stage, the more dynamic the experience is. If you're able to create that same concept in the digital space where you can actually, create really unique experiences, I think you can come up with pricing models that are at or around the same as a concert ticket, if not more, right? Depending on what the actual experience is. For me last night with Quest, Love, being a music head and being such a fan of Fela Kuti, him breaking down, I mean, he literally stopped in the middle of the broadcast and said, let me just do a quick masterclass on the hi-hat. I was like all in, right? And to me, that may be an experience that I'm willing to pay more than what I would normally go to see Questlove DJ for, right?
Right. It's interesting that you say that because that is one of the things that, we've talked about and why I think that one of the things that makes what he's doing special. We talk about differentiation, and that is something that he does to differentiate his DJ sets. Like he talks about that when Bill Withers passed away, it still kills me. Like what, one of my favorite artists of all times, but the tribute that he did to him was just amazing. And talking about the details of the records and, it's the behind the scenes stuff. When he did the Stevie Wonder one, that was incredible. And it was crazy. Stevie Wonder also called him while he was doing the
Oh,
set.
wow.
Yeah, that
That's
was really
insane.
cool. Yeah, that was really cool. And so
Yeah.
he talked to Stevie Wonder live on the air, and I get everybody's not gonna have that kind of opportunity, but it was also cool to see him, who's a celebrity, like fan out a bit too. That was fun.
Yeah, that'll make your day for sure. We're just going through some of the questions, and everyone feel free to ask more. But one of the questions, let's see here, that was asked was specifically about, this is from Chanel Swinton, about implementing new technologies for artists to utilize pay-per-view events and premium content. So maybe we'll just do some quick shout outs, because I've been surveying the landscape of some of the products that are out there. Patreon, which is one that I've used in the past. I currently have Corey Henry up on Patreon, and we've been on Patreon for a while. And it's a great platform for creators where you can develop, again, free items or free content for fans, as well as paid content for fans, and you can tier them. Veeps is one that's been getting a lot of press lately. There's a great LA Times article about a band called Sure Sure, who's using Veeps right now, which is a platform that was developed by the Madden brothers from Good Charlotte. And it's a direct-to-fan VIP platform where you can develop experiences and you can transact, you can charge your fans for those experiences through their platform. And Sure, the LA Times article was referring to the fact that they've been doing a tour of their house, because the band's living in the house in LA. So they've been doing shows in each of the different parts of the house, and that's their tour, right? and they've been selling the tickets through Veeps, and they're pretty successful.
Yeah,
what else?
I would say, we used Veeps, their VIP experiences for Trippie Redd, and been, was really really happy with working with them. They've been great. I'll throw one out there too. Just the platform that Erykah Badu used for her pay-per-view events is a platform called Maestro. So people seem to be pretty excited about that one, and I haven't used it personally, but seems to have a lot of pretty cool features and functionality.
Yeah, one of the things to think about with these platforms for those that are looking for the right one is what are their terms around data, right? And do you get access to the data in some form or fashion? For two reasons. One, you want to be able to communicate with those fans in other ways outside of the platform. And two, is the reality that, a lot of these platforms are startups, right? And they're lightly funded. And so if that platform were to go away, where does your data go, right? How do you take that business elsewhere?
Yep. Exactly. In fact, I was having a conversation earlier about, with Jill's manager. So there's a lot of attention, excitement. Like my wife and her friends are very excited about the Jill versus Erykah event next week. But we have some other things that we're gonna launch around it while there's so much attention on it. But part of, I think, this goes back to your point about data. The importance of data is that because when she did her last tour, I brought in an agency called Integral to run the ad campaign. So I have all of the data. I've got everything. As many places as I could. I had, retargeting pixels on, when available, they were on the sales confirmation page of the ticketing platforms. Ticketmaster doesn't allow that, but other platforms do. And so now, like going into stuff this week, I've got a large audience of people that have been engaged over just literally just the past few months. So really active, recent audience. And with what's happening now, we should be able to take advantage of that to launch some other things.
Really great. And I just went ahead and added, there was a question on the chat. It's Veeps, V as in Victory, Elephant, Beeps, and I just sent the link in the chat to the LA Times article, and they were also recently, featured in Forbes as well. But the data thing is a big deal. I don't think people realize how important that is. Have you another platform that was, I'm starting to see used a lot, and this is before COVID, is the text cell phone number platform.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of them out there. Who's our buddy Ryan Leslie, right?
Superphone. Yeah, Ryan Leslie. And look, Ryan Leslie was really the first one to focus on it.
He was early.
Yeah, he was early in the to market with it, and then Community launched maybe a year ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Jake Udell. Mm-hmm.
So very similar platform, similar concept in that it's let me get cell phone number from the artist from fans and be able to maintain connection through that. And the basic premise is like open rates are a lot higher on text messages. I think that now that it's been happening, with across a larger number of artists, they're starting to get better with respect to some best practices on what you should do and shouldn't do with it, because I think you have to be more sensitive to what you're posting and how often you're communicating with people through it, so that you don't have people unfollowing you. I mean, there is some problems with it, like it's like if you send an email, you can see if people opened it and clicked on it. You send a text message, you don't have all that, you don't have that same level of detail. But I was actually, there's a young artist, Fuse the MC, that I work with, and he's been using Superphone very aggressively, and he's like, this is absolutely the best way for me to communicate with fans. And he's collected a few thousand cell phone numbers, and he's run ad campaigns to collect cell phone numbers, and he now able to but it's been very successful for him because he'll show up in this is obviously pre-COVID, but he'll be like, hey, he can show up in a city, send out a text blast, hey, I'm here, meet me here, and charge a few bucks and make hundreds of dollars just super easily, which for an emerging really small DIY artist can be pretty significant.
Be a big deal. It could be a big deal. And I'm adding, for everyone that's on, I'm adding to the chat links to Superphone, which is Ryan Leslie, who's the well-known producer. He started that platform. And then I'm going to add a link to Community, which was started by Jake Udell. And I guess one thing I'm curious, just looking forward, is because the one thing about text messaging, I think it's obviously everyone carries a cell phone. And to me, I have a 212 cell, right?
Old school.
And I was able to get my hands on that years ago, right? And I'm never going to let it go.
Right.
In fact, you can buy it in the secondary market now. People sell 212 cell phone numbers.
That's funny.
So it's the one thing I'm always going to, even though everyone's got this number and I can't pick up phone calls unless I know who it is, because everyone's got the number, right? Somehow over 20 plus years.
Right.
I'm never going to let it go, but I still find it not that dynamic, right? And I do think there's something interesting in watching, Justin Bieber, just to talk about him real quick. I've been watching him on Instagram Live, basically just randomly accepting requests from fans to have conversations. He'll just sit he's been doing it every day the whole time, right? Where he's just sitting there broadcasting IG Live, and he just accepts a request, and it's a fan in North Dakota with her parents in the room, and he's just having a real conversation with them. What are you up to? What's going on? And then he, hops on to the next person. And I find it to be a much more obviously engaging, much more dynamic, much more interesting, conversation with the fan than necessarily shooting them a text message and saying, hey, call this number and I may pick up,
Yeah.
But, so maybe there's a marriage between the two. Maybe Community and Superphone are just bridge technologies to something that's going to be much more dynamic.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Great conversation today. Really enjoyed having you guys on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, great stuff. Listen, I'm making an announcement about next week's show. So Monday's our Business of Streaming show. we'll have Colin Dixon back from Endscreen Media, and he'll be on with Eric Opeka, who's president of Cinedigm, and also Andrea Clark Hall from Tubi. So they'll be talking about all things streaming on Monday. Everybody,
amazing.
Stay safe. Get outside this weekend. Get away from screens. I certainly need to do that. So have a good one, everybody. Thanks, John.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Bryan.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yep.